Final Fantasy XV is a game for no one. If you want open world fun, the ending of the game will frustrate you with its linearity. If you want a rich narrative, you won't have it because of the concessions needed to make an open world adventure. Square wanted to have its cake and eat it too, and in the end frustrated almost everyone who played the game. At least that's how I felt about the vanilla 15 experience when playing it 6 years ago. The game, however, came a long way since its release, and after checking so many 15 supporters in my Final Fantasy retrospective ranking, which you should check if you haven't, I decided to give old 15 another go. After all, I'm a last-gen peasant and 16 is off the table, therefore 15 is the next best thing. So, I've decided to play it for a third time this year, after my experience with Royal back in 2020, to share my final take with you guys in this video. Here we go. Just as a disclaimer, I gotta say that it's hard to shake that bitter feeling the original brought when playing the Royal Edition. However, I can't be a hypocrite because, well, I love Mass Effect 3 for instance. When I played it for the first time in 2014, all of its DLC were out, as well as the extended ending. So I got to see a more polished, complete product which was far easier to love. So I feel like I should show Final Fantasy XV the same leniency. After all, if someone jumps in now, without having played the vanilla version before, and without any preconceived notions, it is a game which can be easily loved. To begin, let's tackle the game's characters and plot setup, as well as my biggest gripe with 15 as a narrative. And don't worry, spoilers can be easily avoided with the timestamps below, and for now, I'll only tackle key plot points for the first 4 out of 15 chapters in the game. The game opens in medias res with the party battling Ifrit, and they all look rugged, tired, and miserable. However, their bond seems strong. It feels like they have experienced some shit and have come out on the other side better for it. So when we go back in time to the same characters all youthful and joyous and having fun trying to make the regalia work, while that gorgeous Stand By Me cover by Florence and the Machine plays in the background, there's this sense that we are going to embark on a long journey that will fundamentally change who these people are, but their bond will remain intact. It is an alluring premise, and one which focuses on the characters and suggests that these 4 characters are our main focus, not anything else. And that is the best way to enjoy 15 as a narrative, dare I say the only way, trying to overlook the lore and the main plot as best as you can so as to focus only on the core 4 characters and their evolution, because world building isn't handled in the best way. In our core 4, there's Prince Noctis, the heir to the throne of Lucis, who is poor at interpersonal skills due to his sheltered upbringing. He feels a bit distant and withdrawn, not really sharing what he feels or thinks, although he treats the 3 members in his entourage as equals. There's Prompto, an upbeat goofball who loves taking pics, Ignis, the intellectual and sarcastic one, responsible for cooking and driving, and Gladiolus, Noctis's blunt and cheerful bodyguard who loves cup noodles and reading. I don't even need to tell you who is who in the footage or scene, because the character design work by Tetsuya Nomura is really amazing here. The voice actors for the English dub are also excellent. They sell the banter with great energy and you can truly feel a strong bond between the 4. It might be the most impressive and varied banter in any voice RPG ever. So, we have great character design and great voice actors bringing these characters alive. And when we get to know a little bit more about them with the aid of the DLC chapters and as the story progresses, they start to feel really three-dimensional. We get to see Prompto's insecurities, Gladio's more strict and inflexible side, and how rash and reckless Ignis can become to protect his friends despite his cool and composed demeanor. This is probably one of the most fleshed out, well-rounded main casts in the history of the series. Sure, they look like a 90s boy band trying to be edgy with the all-black attire, and their names sound ridiculous if you know just a little Latin, since they are all so literal and related to their fighting style or main personality traits. But if you ignore that, like I did, going with the optional outfits, they will then look like a boy band in the 2010s, trying to hide their identities at the airport, which I think feels more appropriate considering Noctis will be on the run for most of the game. All in all, a solid cast. However, most characters other than the core four are one-dimensional, and the motivations of the antagonists and side characters are poorly explained. They can really be boiled down to one or two adjectives, like Iris is flirty and youthful, Sid is wise and tired, Core is stern and somber, Luna is regal and gentle, Ravus is cold and mysterious with ulterior motives, aka he's poorly written, and Cindy is no comment. Just know that Cindy likes cars, her grandpa, and glitching. The only character other than the bros with any sort of depth is Arden, which is just as well considering the role he plays in the story. Do notice that there is a caveat to that, which I will get to when I discuss the Final Fantasy XV expanded universe at large. Anyway, let's check the plot on this thing. Noctis is traveling with his entourage to Altissia, where he is to wed Lunafreya, a childhood friend, because that will seal a peace accord between Noctis's home country, Lucis, and the ever-expanding Empire of Niflheim. Why? Well, the political aspect isn't really explained in the game. Lunafreya also assures her followers that her job as Oracle will not be affected by her marriage. What is the importance of an Oracle in this world? That's not explained either. Just roll with it. This game doesn't know how to do exposition, but it will make sense eventually. We get some tutorials on combat, hunts, side quests, and get to meet our Cid for this one and his granddaughter Cindy. Again, this is Cindy.
Oh, now I get it. This must be what Papa meant when he said he was gonna teach them boys a lesson.
No colorful commentary on my part. We continue on our road trip until a big roadblock. The Empire has blindsided Lucis, killed its king, captured its crystal, and has declared both Luna and Noctis dead, and are now searching for the Ring of Lucy. You might be wondering, that's a lot. What's the point of this crystal? What made that magic barrier around the capital city Insomnia disappear? Why is this ring important? Why do the villains want it? Why was Lunafreya in Lucis to begin with? Shouldn't she be in Altissia? Well, the game doesn't outright tell you. That's where my biggest gripe and most players with this game comes in. Hardcore 15 apologists will tell you that you can follow the story without consuming anything from the Final Fantasy XV Expanded Universe stuff, but in reality, you can't. If you are an RPG player, storytelling is important to you on some level, so watching at least the Kingsglaive movie is essential. Even if you plan to do what I said and just decide to follow the story for the bros on a road trip angle, because you will get frustrated and confused by the sheer lack of context in this game, and when the open world gives way to a more linear narrative in the end, you will most likely tap out. And it is ludicrous that we get pretty much a trailer for the Kingsglaive movie serving to illustrate what went down in Insomnia. It's like Square's telling us, that sure is confusing, huh? But oh boy, do I have a solution for you. For just $1, you can watch this 6 CGI movie on YouTube. Sure, you could always check the data logs to get a general sense of what's happening, but good luck finding them because Square got traumatized by the complaints regarding 13's data logs and just buried the thing under submenus. You know, you can read all of this boring shit, or you could just get the same information by watching a movie with Jesse from Breaking Bad fighting Ultros while kaijus wreck shit up. It is clear what Square thinks you should do. Anyway, back to the plot setup. Noctis finds out Lunafreya is alive through these dogs that they use to communicate. Why do they use dogs to communicate when this world has phones and apparently they don't have to worry about the Empire wiretapping them, since Noctis talks to resistance leaders through his phone without worry? It is never explained. So, Luna survived the attack and is in the possession of this ring the Empire is after. Will Noctis go to her? Try to go to her? Nope. Good luck on your own, lady. Noctis also gets in touch with Core, a sort of commander from the fallen Lucian army. He explains to Noctis that in order to be able to take on the Empire, he'll need to get stronger by means of the royal arms, which are conveniently hidden in dungeons across the open world. After seeing Noctis in action for a single enemy base, Core thinks Noctis is ready for action and lets him loose in the open world. To me, that right there feels like a contrivance that's hard to understand and really should have been addressed in a more developed manner. Like, if Lucis has fallen, shouldn't Core and the others from the King's Guard stay with Noctis to protect him and aid him at all costs? After all, if Noctis dies, then it's over for Lucis. Why don't they? Why would they let Noct sign up for random hunts against giant monstrosities like he's playing fucking Monster Hunter? As the last in his lineage, Noctis shouldn't really have any agency. It makes no sense. This was actually a good moment to prop Noctis up as a character and justify the open world structure of the game. We could have Core acting as a foil for Noctis, forcing him to continue the main plot and getting the weapons as soon as possible, being really protective and suffocating, while Noctis just wants to continue exploring and consequently helping his subjects because this is his calling as king or some shit. That would have been a nice touch, and could also explain the looseness of the story and would create a parallel between Noctis and Luna, because this is exactly what she's doing. We barely see Luna throughout the narrative, but the little we see show that she's going to Otissia with the ring, awakening summons and helping everyone she can in her path, including those afflicted with Star Scourge, a plague that, you guessed it, isn't properly explained. Anyway, let's continue. There honestly isn't much else in the main plot until the events triggered in Otissia in Chapter 9. We just run about doing open world stuff and finding reasons to get sidetracked from our main mission to find the weapons. We have to find a summon here, escort Iris there, retrieve the car twice. Nothing to write home about. In Chapter 3, for instance, the game goes for a cliched plot device that I truly dislike. Noctis starts having arbitrary headaches that advance the plot in specific directions so that we can have this gigantic boss fight against the summon because there's not much else for him to do other than finding the weapons. And pretty much that's it. That's the setup. If you laser focus on the key points, the narrative structure on Final Fantasy XV is clear. We are going on a unistyle pilgrimage, from dungeon to dungeon after these weapons, while trying to retrieve MacGuffins like that ring I mentioned and the Lucian Crystal, in order to defeat the Empire, avenge our father, and reclaim our throne. Alright, that's pretty straightforward, right? If things are this simple on paper, why does it all sound so convoluted and messy while playing the game? It's all due to poor exposition. We all know about too much exposition and how it can kill a narrative. We joke about lore dumps and forced exposition and how that's bad and all. And sure thing, that's pretty boring. Final Fantasy XV, however, is all the way on the other side of the exposition spectrum. The one less talked about, but that can really fuck up a story just like the other one. This game suffers from too little exposition. It does not know how to signal to the player that something is important and should be remembered. When I introduced the Fall of Lucis in the beginning of the video, I actually highlighted what's important to the main story going forward. The crystal, the ring, and the Star Scourge. The game does not do that. The first mention of the crystal in-game is in a car ride, in which Prompto tells Noctis that he can't believe the Empire has taken the crystal. Take a look.
Can't believe the crystals are gone. Bastards took it all. And we take it back. This is far from over.
It doesn't happen in a cutscene. We don't get a cool view of the crystal and understand how it works. Prompto doesn't explain why this is a big issue. It's just a single line of dialogue amidst banter in the car. The same goes with the ring, which is just showing Luna's hands and then is mentioned by the antagonists in a throwaway line hours later in the story. We don't know how it works and why it's important, so we don't care about it. And Noctis doesn't seem worried about either of these things. Maybe it's because he's more worried about having a sweet CGI dream so that promotional material from 3 plot rewrites ago can be used in the game somehow. Anyway, if he's not worried about these things, we, the players, don't feel like we should worry either. These moments don't suggest to the player that these elements are key to the main plot. It just feels like world building or lore stuff that's not crucial, so the odds that you are actually going to remember them are pretty low. Maybe it's because we were expected to already know the importance of these things and how they work from the movie. I honestly think that's the case. The setting is poorly explained in-game because it has to accommodate expanded universe stuff and make that stuff feel relevant, and that has a curious effect. The movie is self-contained. Like, if you want to force your girlfriend or dad to sit through this thing, they will probably understand it, root for Jesse from Breaking Bad, try to figure out how Sean Bean is gonna die this time, and forget about the whole thing in a day. So, the movie, which is extra content, is self-contained. The game, which is the primary media, is not self-contained. If you play a vanilla game by itself, it makes no goddamn sense. However, the story can kind of work and it can be enjoyable. If you have all the DLC, including the one not present in the royal version of the game, watch the movie, read the plot summary as you go in a wiki for recaps, and for even more character work, the anime as well. If you do all that, and only if you do all that, 15 kind of makes sense and it can be truly enjoyable. I'm putting on the screen what I feel like is the best way to follow the narrative, with recommended breakpoints for the extra content. That's what I did when I replayed this thing this year, and it worked for me. It's still wonky, and we shouldn't need a guide to know how to enjoy a narrative. But this time I enjoyed myself much more than in my previous attempt at 15. And to explain why, I think I really need to discuss spoilers and the ending and some random ramblings that, if you've never played this game and intend to eventually, you really shouldn't know. So, if that's you, check the timestamps below and skip to the next section of the video. To everyone else, let's get into the nitty-gritty. I'll just present a short summary of the ending first so that I can then discuss my issues with the narrative and what the DLC has done to improve it, if it improved it at all. So, while we have been looking for the weapons, Luna has been hitting up the summons and trying to talk them into giving you a hand in your quest, as a favor. Some of them are pretty chill, like Ramo, who just wants you to prove your worth by finding 3 rocks in the open world. Others, like Titan and Leviathan, get pissy and want to punch you in the face before accepting to help you out. It is when Luna rings up Leviathan in Chapter 9 that we get one of the coolest, most memorable moments in the game, with Leviathan absolutely wrecking Alticia. In the middle of it, Arden tries to pull a Sephiroth by killing Luna in order to stop the Leviathan ritual. At least that's what it looks like. I'm not sure. Luna, however, gives you the Lucian ring in a vision or something. It's not clear. With the ring, you get the help of your ancestors and get to stop Leviathan, who, is impressed by your sick button mashing skills and decides to help you out. It is a lot, and it's all pretty out there and hard to follow, but with that kick-ass Yoko Shimomura soundtrack and Noctis flying around like he's Goku or some shit, it's just difficult to be critical with all the sensory overload. It's awesome. Luna dies, and Noctis gets, a little sad. Not much, but he's a little sadder than when his father died. I mean, neither Luna or Sean Bean get the same respect as the car does when it explodes. But I guess in the end, Square knew what people were actually going to care about. Here is when another thing that's poorly explained comes into play. In one of pretty much only 2 lore dumps in the game, Shiva makes a slideshow presentation in which we learn how the summons have helped humanity in the past, and now she needs Noctis to save everyone from darkness. What she doesn't tell us is that the Oracle's mere existence slowed down the spread of this darkness she's talking about, aka the Star-Scourge Blight. So it was not only that Luna could heal people infected by it, but by just being alive, she was saving the world. That's pretty huge, isn't it? So that's why all the way back in the beginning of the game, she was telling people that they shouldn't worry about her wedding because it wouldn't affect her duties. This also puts in perspective that Luna was pretty much the most important person alive, and she was alone and lost and on her own for most of the game, and she could have fallen off a cliff by accident and died, and boom, the world would have been done for. Shouldn't the game have told this right in the beginning? If Shiva knew this, how could she let Noctis be so chill about Luna being alone to the point that he goes have cup noodles and pick frogs for some lady? Does that make any sense to you? Why isn't this information made clear in the game? Why did I only understand this when I read the plot summary in the wiki? Didn't anyone read the script out loud over at Square before shipping this? Jesus. So, with Luna's death, Noctis decides that he's not only going to reclaim his throne anymore, but stop the Star Scourge as well. He goes to Niflheim's capital to get the crystal the Empire had stolen. He kills the Emperor and Ravens, who have now been turned into demons, and he's absorbed by the crystal, where Bahamut tells him in Lore Dump number 2 that he is the Chosen One, who can stop the Star Scourge by killing the main bad guy who wasn't the Emperor, but Arden all along. Who could have seen that one coming? Oh my. The world ends by going into a never-ending night with monsters roaming freely. And while this has been a memorable and iconic moment in past games, we just don't get to see any of it here. It's anticlimactic. Noctis disappears for a decade, doing God knows what inside the crystal. He returns with a beard, rejoins his friends, and gets ready to beat the shit out of Arden in order to defeat the Star Scourge once and for all. He then gives his life so that his ancestors in the ring and the crystal can end darkness together or something, and he gets rewarded with eternal life as a ghost alongside Luna. And you might be confused as fuck, but fuck you, here comes Florence and the Machine. You better cry, you insensitive asshole. Let's go! Look, I played this thing 3 times over the years. I have consumed most of the side content, and I still don't get half of what's happening after Bahamut shows up. The ending is just aesthetics and emotion. It doesn't hold up against scrutiny. It's a beautiful, hot mess. It reminds me of the last reboot of Evangelion movie, which introduces a bunch of loose shit in its final moments that makes no sense. However, you are so moved by the theme song and the catharsis the characters are experiencing that you just let it slide, because you are so stimulated on an emotional level that you can't help but feel pleased with it, regardless of any inconsistency. Obviously, there's gonna pop up an apologist defending Eva and FF in the comments to tell me how I'm dumb, but it all makes sense actually. Sure, whatever you say, man, enlighten me. Even enjoying the end as it is now, with a better explored Insomnia due to the overhauling in the Royal Edition, I still think it's a pity that we can't fully understand the story without a wiki, even with the movie and all the side stuff, since so many crucial plot elements are so poorly explained, if explained at all. In that ending, Noctis goes into slumber, and when he wakes up, he's already been transformed. We don't get to experience the climax of his character arc. He is the protagonist. It's jarring, and it gets you wondering, was this really intentional, or did they have to cut corners because there was no time left? You know the answer. They had to release the game as it was, and that was that, with a we'll patch it later mentality. And look, I honestly think that the team behind 15 really wanted to patch it all. Episode Arden is proof of that. It felt different from the first 3 episodes, since it not only fleshed out Arden as a character, but also addressed many plot holes in the story, and it is essential to make any sense of it. It is in episode Arden, for instance, that we understand that the Star Scourge Blight came from the meteor Titan was holding. And while I appreciate that we eventually got to know that, why didn't they mention this when we first met Titan? It wouldn't have been hard. Instead of a boring 5-minute drive with the shitty driving mechanic, we could have, I don't know, a flashback in which Sean Bean explains all of this stuff to Noctis. Then we would know all of these crucial plot points, that the Star Scourge is an alien infection that makes nights longer, brings out monsters, and can infect people. At the same time, Noctis could miss his dad or something, addressing another issue I have with the game. Noctis is pretty nonchalant about his dad dying after a chapter 3 or 4. Why? The game doesn't say. I suspect it is to keep the open world lighthearted in the first half of the game, which is just bad storytelling. Having Sean Bean show up in flashbacks for exposition could address both issues in the game. Noctis not giving a shit about him, and the game lacking exposition. Oh well, I'm getting sidetracked here. Back to the DLC. The way the game originally set up the DLC chapters was pretty insidious to me, because we miss a huge chunk of the main character's narrative arc whenever they leave the party, and when they return, they are different people. Without easy access to these side stories, we are lost and the game feels empty. Sure, the DLCs are mostly solid. The Gladiolus one is pretty mid actually, but the Ignis one is great, and the Prompto one is one of the best sections in the whole game. But it feels scummy that we originally had to pay for these. That's not a problem anymore, so I won't hold it against Royal. However, I have to restate that these DLCs serve to make the character arcs complete. They don't help with the main story. I say this because I've seen other reviewers saying that with Royal, 15 now felt complete in how it should have been at launch. And while it is better, it's not there yet. It still needed more work to feel complete. I can only imagine how episodes Aranea, Luna, and Noctis would have improved the game. If you don't know or don't remember, we were meant to get DLC episodes for Lunafreya, Noctis, and Aranea, and those were all canned because Square probably felt they had already recouped their production and marketing costs for the game by that point, and their resources would be better allocated elsewhere. But really, those were needed, for the legacy of the game if anything else. I honestly feel for Tabata and the team behind 15, and knowing that they couldn't finish their vision gives the game such a tragic pathos. This game is definitely not among the best, but it possesses an allure, a gravitas that better games in the series like 5 or 10 don't have for me. Oh, and when I said those cancelled DLCs were needed, I don't mean the Aranea one. That was just fan service, most likely because she looks fucking cool. But Lunafreya needed it, Noctis needed it, because while the bros have complete story arcs due to their DLCs, a large chunk of Noctis' arc is absent, and was going to most likely be the focus of his DLC chapter. I guess with Luna the idea was to integrate her more into the story, and I guess work on her relationship with Noctis, which sucks. We don't know who Luna is as a person. The game keeps cutting to young Noctis and Luna interacting as if this could show an immortal, timeless bond between these characters, but I don't buy it. These flashbacks should really show some form of chemistry between adult Luna and Noctis instead. There's no way we can root for their romance if we never see them interacting. It feels like their relationship is just a contractual obligation between kingdoms and nothing more. I mean, they obviously care about each other, but their relationship has, let's say, sibling vibes. However, that's not what these characters tell us. They say they're madly in love and that the peace treaty is just a fringe benefit. Noctis has more chemistry with Iris, with the bros and the fucking car than he does with Luna. It's just baffling, especially considering the ending we get. And it's interesting because in the game's original version, Versus 13, Noctis and Stella, his original love interest, do show a lot of chemistry. They seem to be on opposing sides of the conflict, and that's tragic because they really would like to park each other but can't. So I feel like a Noctis DLC would have made Noctis' character arc whole, and the Lunafreya one would have hopefully fixed their romance and given her more of a personality. But still, these things would fix the character issues, not the clunky plot. No extra DLC chapter that you play from the main menu and that's not integrated into the game would do that. For the plot to work without a guide, the game would have needed an Atlas-style re-release, with new stuff baked into the game throughout the narrative, making the vague plot details clearer and bringing into focus what actually matters to the main story. And that's not what the Royal Edition is. But it could have been. It greatly improves the game, but it doesn't bring it over the line. Even other notoriously convoluted narratives in the series like XIII or XIII are self-contained and can be mostly understood if you just pay attention to the game. That's not the case here. However, considering the daunting production of this game, it is a miracle it even exists. I'm not one of those Versus 13 widows still longing for what the game could have been had Tetsuya Nomura actually accomplished what he set out to do. I'm fine with the direction they took the game in, whatever. If you don't know, Versus 13 was announced in 2006 as one of many Final Fantasy XIII side projects. These projects also included Final Fantasy Type 0, which was directed by Hajime Tabata. Versus would stay in development hell from its announcement until late 2011, when it was internally rebranded as Final Fantasy XV. Since Type 0 had already released by then, and it also had the type of real-time action promised on the Versus 13 trailer, a lot of its personnel, including Tabata, were added to the new 15 project. At that moment, Nomura was still the overall game director, with Tabata working in tandem with him. Nomura left the project in 2014 to focus on Kingdom Hearts 3, and Tabata was given the unenviable task of finishing 15, trying to live up to the Versus 13 expectations, delivering on a Ubisoft-style open-world structure, delivering on the franchise's first mainline real-action combat, and, not sucking. I feel all of that is important to know because it shows that the game wasn't actually in production for a decade. It was in production for 5 years, which is, sort of the norm for AAA games these days. It changed main directors midway through, although Tabata has stated that he and Nomura shared the same vision for the game. That vision included a lot of new things that, for the most part, members of the team were not comfortable with. Tabata has stated in interviews the following: "It certainly wasn't an easy thing to get the whole team to have the courage to move ahead and try something so out of their comfort zone. It's a really different approach. Rather than having a linear progression where you have each scene with the drama and storytelling tightly packed, you've now got this open world you're free to travel around, and you have to put the storytelling within the environment." I guess we can say that Tabata and his team were aware of the storytelling issue and just couldn't really find a solution to implement the story penned by seasoned Square writer Kazushige Nojima all that well. And the fact that the 3 scenario writers for this entry were fairly inexperienced at the time, with lead scenario writer Saori Tamuro having only worked on Dissidia before 15, a game that relies heavily on scripted encounters, probably didn't help things. And I'm not throwing her under the bus here and saying the mess is her fault, chill. I feel like this was a collective fuck-up. No one knew what to do regarding the implementation of Nojima's story, and they were really focused on making other elements work, like the open world and combat. And hey, the game works in those aspects, so kudos to them. The open world is fun, if you like that kind of stuff. I do, I can't help it. In it, we have hunts to complete, and some of those pick this NPC's laundry on the other side of the map and bring it back to them type of quests. Take pics of the open world for Jorge Garcia and kill 3 dog things for Forrest Whitaker. It's fluff, but fluff that works if you can't help but check an exclamation mark on your minimap. We can also clear enemy bases like we're playing Fantasy Far Cry, and we can tackle some pretty sweet optional dungeons, which are among the game's highlights and a welcoming change after 13 lacking a bit in this regard. The open world is also really pretty, like a fantasy version of North America, showing off what the Luminous engine could do. Some of the scripted moments with large beasts are really impressive and make the open world feel alive. Sure, when you play the game for a second or third time, some of that sheen goes away, but it's impressive and a highlight nonetheless. In general, the open world feels a little bit too empty, as there are very few human settlements other than the rest stops, and the ones we do see don't look all that impressive other than Alticia. And maybe that's for the best, because apart from the main cast and the supporting characters, most of the NPCs don't look all that great. I don't know if this is engine related or simply a matter of prioritizing other aspects of the production due to their tight schedule, but in crowded places like Lestalin, the characters look not good. One thing that the games handle really well is the integration of our party to the world. The core 4 characters interact with it in an impressive way, and you feel that they are truly living and reacting to the environment around them. The way their hobbies, their personalities, and the game's other systems are integrated into the open world is also pretty great. Prompto's pictures, Ignis's cooking, their camping chats, or the character work done through short side missions related to camping are all great and help make the cast in 15 one of the best in the entire series. Despite all the drama regarding Final Fantasy XVI's foray into real-time action, it was 15 that paved the way in this regard. However, combat really isn't that exciting in this game. It boils down to a mash circle and wait for a prompt to press square to block or counter type of situation. In the vanilla version, only Noctis was playable, so it got really tiresome after a while since the combat was so repetitive. This is one area in which the Royal Edition truly shines, because now we can switch between party members mid-battle. You have to unlock this skill with AP. It is not as smooth as it was in FF7 Remake, for instance, because you don't switch characters with a tap of a button. You actually pause the game and choose who you want to play as from a mini-menu. But whatever, it's nice to have some variety at least, and Ignis has by far the best gameplay out of all the characters. It is actually fun to play as him, while Noctis is just serviceable. Speaking of AP, this is a kind of experience point you get alongside regular experience. You can use these in the Ascension section of the menu to unlock abilities from different perk trees, standard stuff. Overall, the game's combat is pretty safe. It's understandable, considering this was the very first time Square tried real-time action in a mainline title, so being serviceable is more than enough. Something which I can't forgive, though, is the magic system in this thing. It's dog shit. It's a draw thing like Final Fantasy VIII of all things. Seriously, from everything you could take from Mate as an inspiration, that's what you decided on. It's baffling. And I did not use magic whatsoever while playing the game, and it made no difference whatsoever. So, yeah, even with the Royal Edition, that's still a drawback for the combat in 15. And that's it for combat. It's safe, it won't bother you, but it won't excite you either. It's neither a highlight nor a major flaw in the game. And let's just wrap this thing up because I wanted to make a 20-minute video and I have obviously failed miserably at that. Summarizing 15, we can say that the production team was so worried about making the open world and the real-time action combat work that they forgot to, I don't know, check if the story was actually understandable in-game. So the new things they tried out ended up working well, but the rich narrative and world building, which are Final Fantasy staples and where this franchise rarely, if ever, misses, is where Tabata and his team dropped the ball. And that makes 15 truly different from the rest and sort of the black sheep in the FF family for me. The game was a mess at launch, but with the Royal Edition, it is not that bad anymore. The story is still a mess due to poor exposition, but a mess you can still enjoy in a train wreck kind of way. And the characters, that's where 15 truly shines. This game presents probably the best character design work ever by Nomura, as there are no duds. Obviously, try to guess what are the duds in the past work in the comments. Final Fantasy XV is now flawed, messy, but not completely broken. It's now a beautiful patchwork with just a few holes in it, but there's a certain charm to it. It's the kind of media that you can't just pick up and passively consume to love. You have to put in the work to make the magic happen alongside 15. It's almost like you're in a relationship with the game. And for most, that sort of work to just enjoy media is a turn-off. So if that's you, don't bother with the Royal Edition. It isn't transformative enough to change your mind about the game. But if you have never played 15 and go in with the mindset that this is a game focused on character work and brotherly bond instead of a rich plot, you can have a truly great time. I have now found a new admiration for the game. It's difficult. It's a complicated feeling. It's a longing for what this game could have been, had it actually had more time in the oven so that it could be the best version of itself. The way it is now, it is fine, but it could have been, oh, so much more. And that's it, everyone. Whew. I didn't mean to make this such a long video, so if you can help me out by liking and commenting down below, that will help me out with the algorithm and will make my hot takes reach more people. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you when I see you.